Hi, Jonathan York from My Financial Partners, looking at the investment markets. Really pretty strong start to US equities for 2023. The first month of January, you've seen the S&P up around 5%, the Dow's up around 2%, and the NASDAQ that was really hammered in 2022 is up around 10% now. And historically, that is a pretty good sign because 4 out of the 5 times when that's followed a negative year, the market has risen over 20% in the following 12 months. So I guess watch this space. Now, certainly the market we put to a pretty big test this week. You've got the big techs reporting. You've got Meta, Amazon, and Apple all reporting this week, as well as a Fed meeting. Now, the Fed could be really pretty interesting because, certainly the inflationary sort of data is all pointing to a clear downward trend now. And it's just going to be very interesting to see what comes out of the Fed meeting. Will they still hike rates? Potentially probably 25 basis points just to sort of show they are serious about getting inflation under control. But more importantly, probably with the sort of accompanying rhetoric and the dialogue that goes with it. Still quite interesting that the US 10-year is still around that sort of 350 level. But also as well, yesterday the IMF came out and revised higher the global growth for 2023, revised it up to 2.9 from 2.7. Now, while that's still maybe a little bit anemic, the fact they are revising it up does sort of point to a stronger sort of growth globally out there. And obviously, a lot is being made now of the sort of China reopening, and that's really having a pretty major impact. Also in the US, obviously, we've still got that debt ceiling and, really just trying to sort of kick the can down the road, really, and get something sorted out with that. Oil still trading around 80 bucks a barrel. Now, the UK braced for another wave of strikes and industrial action out there. And, it's really pretty tough going out there in the UK at present. Now, in the EU, again, sort of encouraging signs. Certainly economies aren't really sort of slowing as much as anticipated. But also as well, the major sort of news is that so far, the potential sort of gas crisis hasn't really eventuated. Now, in Australia, CPI was up just over 7%. That's one of the highest readings since 1990. Actual level was 7.8. Now, that's obviously pretty high, and you expect the Reserve Bank now to increase rates by potentially another 25 basis points when they meet in February. Yeah, here in New Zealand as well, we've still got, really pretty stubbornly high CPI. That came in at 7.2, which is sort of quite interesting because, globally, certainly in the US, UK, and parts of Europe as well, you're starting to see that inflation number starting to fall. So what would that mean for the Reserve Bank when they meet later in February? Because certainly the recent flooding in Auckland as well is having a pretty severe impact on sort of fruit and veg as well. And that potentially, with crops being destroyed, will just push prices higher. Because certainly the Reserve Bank does face some pretty tough decisions out there, because certainly the housing market is falling. Yes, inflation is still out there, but potentially some of the inflationary pressures out there are sort of out of people's controls and potentially will be temporary. But then, as a result of the flooding, with that, all those sort of insurance claims coming through, and sort of fresh money coming to the economy, potentially that sort of could spur a little bit of growth going forward. But obviously, still got a pretty major labour shortage in New Zealand here as well. Now, with the new Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, taking over now, the first opinion poll after that was pretty surprising, actually. Labour got a pretty big boost, around 5 percentage points. Now, while it's clearly too early to say that Chris Hipkins is doing a great job, because the poll had only been sort of taken after he'd been in the job for a couple of days, but really what it did show was that just how unpopular ex-Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern was. Because really it's the same sort of faces in the cabinet, a few minor sort of tweaks and changes, but really the same sort of personnel. And on the back of that poll now, it's really quite interesting, because at present that would point to a hung parliament in October. Now, clearly a lot of time will pass until October, but at present I suppose that's sort of encouraging signs for the new Prime Minister. And again, an early test could come as early as sort of today or tomorrow, when potentially he looks to announce what's going to happen with those cost of living sort of crisis, and potentially the fuel tax. Will that be extended? Now, obviously with those gains in international share markets, that's sort of helping quite a few KiwiSaver balances. Now, if you are looking for income options, go to the website www.bayfinancialpartners.co.nz for lots of interesting articles, and we look forward to speaking to you soon.